Yeah.
Sorry, I got you now. Amen.
Under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Okay, public comment. No public comments. Is anybody out there would like to say something that didn't sign up? Okay, we move forward. Next on the agenda, would like to be a motion to approve the agenda.
We got no recognitions. You get the recognition part. Mr. Chairman, I think we skipped over the recognitions part.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, recognition, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you. You have anything?
Yes, sir. I would like to, some of the ones in the audience tonight or watching online may not have realized that we had a partial statewide 911 outage Saturday. It affected not only Caswell, but a bunch of counties throughout the state. I just want to give recognition and a big thank you to our 911 director, our 911 personnel. They came in, they made sure that we had a cure line in with Rockingham County to receive the calls, as well as all of our fire departments. They manned the fire departments until that line could get established, which would cut out, you know, if we had a call come in due to that delay, response time would not be delayed. So I just want to thank everybody on that.
Okay,
Thank you.
Rose? You have anything? You, Ms. Queen? Okay, motion is go. We move on next. Approval of agenda. Motion made by McGrath, second by Tim. All in favor, said aye. Aye. All opposed? Carried unanimous. Need a motion of the Senate agenda.
Make a
So
motion.
move.
Motion made by Dixon, second by Ms. Gwen. You heard the motion in question? All in favor, saying aye. Opposed, carried unanimous. Okay. Move on down to Mr. Thomas, the auditor.
Good evening.
Sorry about that. You'd be kind enough to flip over to page 1. Under that significant audit findings, there should be 3 different paragraphs talking about appropriate accounting policies, financial statements prepared by management, the accounting estimates that are in there, and then depreciation allowance for doubtful accounts. We were all good with those items. On page 2, we talked about the financial statement disclosures. We were good with that. No difficulties encountered in performing the audit other than what I'll talk about in just a moment. No uncorrected misstatements, no disagreements with management. Management did provide us with a representation letter dated July 23rd. We're unaware that management consulted the outside accountants, auditors, etc. And then under findings and issues. A few months ago, I think I presented to June 30, 21, and most of these, if not all of these, are the same type findings. So if I brush through that, I'm happy to stop and slow down. But for the most part, these are repeats of what I talked about at that meeting. The delay in the audit report, we're all aware of that. various key processes not completed timely. The changes in or turnover in staff positions creates challenges. On page 3, the EMS receivables balance as well as the allowance need to be reviewed regularly. Efforts should be made to ensure that all negative fund balances are cleared up. Projects have been completed or closed on the general ledger. Got to review the depreciation schedule. Transfers between funds are recorded. The county has one outstanding loan associated with a revolving loan fund, and that's in arrears. Need to make sure we're on top of that. Prior period adjustments were recorded for missed postings in prior years. Adopting a budget when several new funds did not make the budget amendments. Adequate documentation was not obtained throughout the year to substantiate all the transactions recorded. 2 departments, the Register of Deeds and Inspections Plannings were noted for not complying with the daily deposit general statutes, which is $500. And board approval was not obtained for tax releases and refunds, and that was 2022-008. And then the county did not pay their monthly Elders contributions timely. And then please be aware that GASB 98 or 96, I'm sorry, is coming for the June 30, 23. And that's talking about subscription-based, my mind went blank on me, subscription-based, like software. If you buy, you have a big software project that you're going to be paying for over a period of time, you have to capitalize that and then put an associated debt on it. It's similar to the lease standard, where if you have a long-term lease, you have to record the lease and then a corresponding debt associated with it. It's more of an accounting issue than it is anything else. If you were running a private business, you'd expense those amounts, but according to GASB standards, they want you to capitalize those amounts. On page 5, despite all the other issues, there are some really good news in the numbers themselves. I don't say these are all the key numbers in the report, but these are definitely some of the key numbers in the report that you want to look at, make sure you know where they are. So the top number there, the total fund balance in your general fund at $14,942,000. You go all the way back to 18, that number is $7,018,000. So during that 5-year period, the general fund balance is more than doubled, which is very healthy. Unavailable fund balance, $3,649,000. Restricted is $7,792,000. General fund expenditures, including transfers out, less new debt, $24,622,000. And fund balance available as a percentage is 45.87. If you go back to 18, that figure is 19.46%. And then unassigned fund balance is $7,150,000. The unassigned fund balance as a percentage is 29.04%. These percentages are important in the sense that if you ever go to the LGC state treasurer meeting for debt issuance, they're going to look at these 2 numbers, these 2 percentages, to see where you are. And that's why we put them in there. Then you see revenues over and expenses before transfers. You got $1,504,000 in your general fund. That minus $7,744,000 in other governmentals is because you have projects going on, and that could be simply the timing of when you receive the revenue versus when the expenditures were made. Cash in the general fund is $13,313,000. If you go back to 18, that number is $5,976,000. Other governmentals is $1,418,000. Cash and transportation is $514,987. Your general fund balance again is $14.9 million. Fund balance other governmentals is 2.5. Your net position in the solid waste is a minus 143,000. Net position in transportation is a positive 952,000. You see your property tax rates there, collection percentage, which is the highest of any of the 5 years shown for the current year, and then collection percentage excluding motor vehicles. You see your property valuation, the levy amounts, and then your debt. You can see where your debt did jump up over that 5-year period because of some new issuances. And then the breakdown of your general fund revenues by department and expenditures by department Total general fund revenues being 28.6 million and total expenditures being 27.1. If you'd be kind enough to flip over to page 6, on the blue bar there, you see the nice trend in total fund balance. Restricted fund balance is also increasing. On the bottom, you see your analysis of fund balance available, going from 19.46 up to 45.87. Then on page 7, you see your unassigned fund balance as a percentage, going from 13.5 up to 29.04%. And then revenues over and under expenses before transfers on the bottom. You see your general fund having a nice chart there where all 5 years are positive. On page 8, see your cash balances at the top and fund balances at the top in pie charts. And underneath that, you see total cash balances being 15.2 million and total fund balances being 18.3 million. On page 9, you see your property tax rates there compared with your group weighted average, and then the collection percentages compared to your group weighted average as well. And by the cash balances, fund balances, collection percentage, there's some positive things in these numbers. So even though you're behind on your audits, there's some issues, et cetera, the numbers themselves have some very positive numbers or positive trends. On the page 10, you can see your debt analysis there. Most of it's in that bond anticipation note of 13.1 million. On the bottom, you see your breakdown of your general fund revenue in a pie chart with ad valorem taxes making up 45.19%. Your other taxes, permits, et cetera, being 24.98%, and intergovernmental revenue being 16.17%. On page 11, you see public safety, human services, general government, education being the main percentages of expenditures. If you've been on the board for a period of time, then you remember LGC used to send out what they called unit letters. This page 12, 13, and 14 replaces that unit letters. The LGC won't send those out. And they send us some templates, et cetera, so that we can relay their information, what they want us to say to you, and then you have 60 days from tonight's meeting to respond to that. And you see reconciliation of records, deficit fund balances, prior period adjustments there, budget violations on page 13, and another budget violation, the late submission of audit, retention of records, internal controls, lack of board approval on the tax releases and refunds, the daily deposits, and a lack of internal controls around payroll. All of those items have to be responded to, which are very similar to the previous one we talked about a few months ago. If you use a similar letter, you should be okay. I think John, I'm probably going to talk to you about where we are on 6/30/23. I think we've done some significant work in terms of some of our testing, but there's some work to be done to get a good trial balance in order to move forward on that. So hopefully we can make that happen as quickly as possible. I'm happy to answer any questions, not just tonight, but anytime you have questions, you read through the audit report, you look at the presentation summary, and you've got questions on anything, you're always welcome to call the office. If I happen not to be there, tell them to give you my cell number. I'll do my best to get you an answer to your question.
Any board member have any questions? John?
What was the major holdup in getting this accomplished? It's been a long time coming, and we were told different reasons that things had drug along. What was your finding on that?
Well, we got the trial balance, I think. I'd have to look back on the date. So as soon as we got the trial balance, we had a pretty quick turnaround. And just like right now, we've done it, the testing we're able to do, but we really can't start on the 6/30/23 until we can get there. So one of the big holdups is as mentioned in the findings, the bank recs weren't complete. Several other things weren't reconciled back to the general ledger. And we have some restrictions on us in terms of we can't actually do that for you. So until we get a trial balance that the bank's reconciliation actually ties to it, then we're kind of stuck waiting on somebody to do that and give that to us before we can actually do our work.
Well, where do you, as the auditor, lay the blame for the information not being reported properly where it took so long for all this to take place? You're waiting on prior year numbers. This problem's been going back a long time. What created it in layman's terms so this board can understand? We see what you have here. We see what you're saying. But break it down. Who was responsible for the debacle that started all of this in motion?
Ultimately, the finance officer is responsible for what's going on here. That area, whether it's one person or the department, the finance officer who signs off on all that is the one who's responsible.
Well, thank you for your candor. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Anyone else? Gwen, you have anything?
Well, Mr. Jeffrey. Mr. Jeffrey,
Yes, sir.
one thing, and I don't think it's pretty much addressed to you, one thing I would like to see going forward, I know we've been in this process for a while, and I'm hoping it's gonna be cleared up here pretty quick. So you're waiting on the 23 stuff before you can get started.
Well, we've done most of the work that we're able to do to this point until we get a good trial balance.
Right.
Yes, sir. So we're kind of in a holding pattern, if you will.
And you saying that's dependent upon us?
Yes, sir.
Okay. One thing I would like to see, Mr. Manager, is once we do get through this process, I think this board needs to get a quarterly year-to-date report on expenditures. At least that is, we can have something to look at, especially if we got departments that are going over budget. At least we can see that there's a problem coming. Now, it may be something totally out of their control. I understand that. But at least this board will have an idea of where we stand, midway through this budget process or cycle. So we don't run into this again as soon as we can get it finished up. Thank you. Appreciate all you've done.
Technically, there's a statute that asks the finance officer to present that to you as a board quarterly.
Okay.
So that is definitely something that you should be getting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it.
On the agenda, the Vegas Health update, Ms. Allen.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry, I didn't hear my name being called. I'm Kara Donor. I am the Community Relations Director from VIA Health. For those of you who don't know, VIA is one of the 5 state managed care organizations. We manage Medicaid for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, substance use disorders, and also foster care. As you can imagine, it's a pretty busy space right now in the state of our world. So right now the state has decided that we need to have whole person care. So VIA has been providing mental health services for over 50 years. And to give you an example, so a Blue Cross Blue Shield and a United, those are called standard plans. They have typically provided just just physical health services. So what's been happening with the state is they have decided that our organization should also be providing physical health services, and a Blue Cross Blue Shield United Healthcare should be also providing mental health services. So everyone has whole person care. They don't have to go to different providers all over the place. They can be seen by one organization. So what that means is that VIA will still be caring for the most acute patients. So people with bipolar disorder, people on the innovations waiver, I'll talk about in a second. And then Blue Cross will be helping people who have anxiety, ADHD, things that are a little less severe. But that's important to know. Not everyone will qualify for the VIA side of Medicaid. But now that United is also providing mental health services, there are a lot of extra services that people don't know exist. So if anyone is interested, I can provide those resources to the county. But there are things like car seats, Weight Watchers, tutoring for kids, and people have a choice of what plan they pick. So I just wanted to mention that. Tonight, I'm going to go over some of the statistics for Caswell County on how you're performing and the kind of people who are utilizing our services. So you can see this is our innovations waiver. So if someone has an intellectual or developmental disability, they can apply for the innovations waiver. And what that is it's care up to $120,000 a year, which is amazing. Because if someone is in a facility, the state is probably paying triple that amount of money for care that's probably not as good, because there is a lot of abuse that occurs in some facilities. So really, we're trying to change that trend and bring people out of facilities and into more private settings. So if, for example, if a family has a child with a disability, it can take up to a decade or more to get on this waiver. The state consistently adds more members to it for each county. But this graph shows you right now how many people are on the innovations waiver. So I think that says 23 on the left in the orange. And on the right side, it says 19. So those are the number of people waiting to get on the innovations waiver. There are many services that they can get while they wait, like help with workforce requirements. Different facilities offer programs that can help while they wait, but that's a pretty neat program that we have in the state. You can go to the next slide. So right here, you can see the active members that we serve in care management. Care management is someone that assist a member and make sure they have kind of wraparound services, that they have everything they need to be receiving the right care. So you can see that the orange is for children and the blue is for adults. So those are the people that are being served. And down on the bottom, you see IDD, that's individuals with developmental disabilities, and mental health is MH. You can go to the next slide. This is a busy slide. I'm not going to read it to you, but you can see the hospital admissions, and you can see the readmits are in orange, and the blue just are the single admits. So you can see those are pretty low numbers. So that's good. And then that's for mental health on the left and substance use on the right. You can go to the next slide. And here you can see the hospitals that surround Caswell County. You can see the admits there and the rapid readmits in the last 30 days. Those numbers are pretty low as well. You can go to the next. And here's community hospitals for Alamance Regional. These are non-Medicaid people who do not have Medicaid. So that could be state funded care. And anyone, if someone's driving through Caswell County and they don't have Medicaid, they could fall into that bucket of people being served. And you can see the community hospital inpatient use for adults at the different providers across the county or close to the county. These aren't in the county. And this is the same slide for children. And these are emergency department admissions and readmission. So the rapid response number was pretty big right there on the left for readmits. So there's a lot going on in the behavioral health space. You know, I just presented in Rockingham County, close to you, this week about safety in schools. And, you know, we have a lot of issues. So last year in this country, 1,500 teachers were assaulted by students. And so there's just a lot going on with, unfortunately, with cell phones in classrooms and social media pressures. And so we're trying to help families and parents on the front end deal with some of these issues because there's a lot of need in the behavioral health space in schools. And so we work quite a bit with the schools in this county. We have a good relationship with the Health Collaborative here. I know a lot of us at VIA attend a lot of their meetings, but I did want to let you know that we have a class going on this week in Caswell County, 2 classes actually. It's called Question, Persuade, and Refer, and we call it QPR. It's for suicide prevention. And I will tell you, those numbers are raising rapidly. And we even see suicides in elementary age children. So anybody is welcome to attend this. It's on the 22nd. There are 2 classes. One is 8:30 to 11:30. Breakfast will be served there. The other class is 12:30 to 3:30. And lunch will be served there. That's open to any community member and any school staff, and that will be at the Yanceyville Municipal Building. So that's just an announcement I have. Does anyone have any questions?
I want to ask.
Yes,
I think I
yes,
heard you mention a wait list early on in your
Yes.
presentation. How do they get off the wait list and how long is the waiting list? Are they on the waiting list?
It's long. It could be, I think right now, the longest it could be up to 12 years. So a lot of people don't know it exists, this program. And the innovations waiver, just to give you an example. So I know a lady who has used it in Chatham County. Her son has autism, but it's on a scale where he could live independently. And so he was in a lot of homes that were abusive, and she got him on the waiver. And now he lives in a tiny house on his own. You know, he has care management staff come in all day long to make sure he's taking his medicine. He has, you know, he can make his own meals that he prepares himself. He has notes all over the place, but he lives a great life. It's safe. He's happy. So I would encourage the county, you know, we could maybe put something on the county website to let people know this program exists, because it helps family members assist their children, you know, or a sibling. But, you know, that's the challenge, is getting on the list. Yeah. So. Are there any other questions?
No question?
No.
Well, thank you.
No, thank you so much for
all
having
what
me.
you do. Right. Next on the list, we the update on the board broadband update. Mr. Justice, man.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Commissioners, how are y'all doing this evening? So again, good times to be given an update. It's all positive news in the county, which are the updates that I typically like to give. We're going to do just sort of a quick rundown. I think it's going to be helpful because Caswell County has had so many different grants kind of parceled out over the last 2 years, 3 years. I think it'll be easy to just do a quick rundown on the grants that you've gotten, kind of where they are in the county, what the progress is, and then have a quick conversation about what's coming up on the horizon, what's ahead. If at any time you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to break in and ask. So that sort of quick roadmap, you know, you guys have been incredibly aggressive in going after grants. Of all the counties that I represent in the state, y'all have been incredibly fortunate at receiving a lot of grants. You were smart about having some money set aside to be able to use as matching funds so that you could be competitive and go after grants. You know, the first grant that we had was a federal grant. It's called the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. It was a reverse auction where providers sort of bid with the federal government and kind of bid for unclaimed census block groups. I'll be honest with you, the mapping wasn't that great back then. This bidding was all done in around 2019. There was very spotty mapping. It was done at a census block level. And if one house was served in a census block, it made that entire census block ineligible to be bid on. So you missed a lot of homes. But as you'll see in a little bit, there was wide coverage across the county on what was bid on. So I think you guys came out much better than a lot of other counties through that RDOF process. Then we'll talk into Great Grant. It's a state-run grant, the Growing Rural Economies through Advanced Technology grant. Again, it's a state-funded grant using ARPA funds. They went through 2 rounds of funding through the Great Grant process. They had about $400 million set aside, and they've almost exhausted that $400 million going out to the counties. The CAB grant was another $400 million pot of money. They've gone through an initial round of funding, of which you guys were awarded a grant. And then we're going to talk about kind of some ways that the state's trying to be creative about drawing down the rest of those funds. And then we'll talk about going forward. If you want to go ahead. So this is a map of RDOF. It was the largest grant. It covered around 3,600 homes in the county. This build has been completed. So as you can see, it is a very large swath of the county that's wiped out. Every house within those blue areas, barring some, there are some minute circumstances that could prevent a house from being served, but by and large, 99% of the houses within those blue blocks are served and have service right now. So we're very happy with that. We're happy with the progress that we made. Took us a little over 2 years from start to finish before we could finish that, but it was complete. We initially said, I think when I spoke with you in February, that was initially kind of said we had finished up at that point. We did reopen construction. There were a few houses that called in and said, hey, we should be in the area we missed, and we kind of went back out and took care of them. But we believe that we're done at this point. Next map that I think we've already gone to is the Great Grant. So we, Charter Communications, did not win an initial Great Grant in the county. That grant went to another provider, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But we were fortunate enough to win a second round award, and that was for about 606 homes. As you can see, it's primarily focused in that sort of southwest corner of the county, but there are pockets here and there that kind of get you some good coverage. Construction of that is ongoing. We've completed a little over 100 of those homes to this point. There have been some other kind of addresses thrown in, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes, that have kind of prolonged that process. But we're in the process of building that, and we're going to keep right on through until we get done. And I don't foresee any hiccups in that construction. Next, we have our CAB grant. As you can see, it is primarily focused in the northern half of the county. And again, all of these grants were designed for providers to come in and fill in the gaps that were left over from RDOF and left over from where other providers had previously served. So if it looks a little jumbled, it's because we're filling in gaps every time there's a grant round. This CAB grant funding was for 589 houses. That contract, I believe, has just been executed within the past couple of months, and that's a 2-year build time. I anticipate that we'll be building that CAB grant as we're coming through and finishing the Great Grant that we just spoke about and the next Great Grant. So I anticipate that it'll be finished up before that 2-year deadline substantially, but we do have 2 years to build it. And then finally, we have another round of great grant. This is actually what we picked up from a provider that defaulted. So I mentioned to you before that we were not successful in winning a first round of the great grant. We won a second round. The provider that won the first round had to default on their obligation. The state opened up some of those passings to be able to be taken by us, and we were aggressive in going after those. That particular tranche was about 249 addresses. And I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you, but I want to do it to get to this next slide. This is the overall picture of where we're at and what has been awarded to this point. Total, we're looking at a little over 5,000 homes that have been connected by grants in the past, we'll call it 3 years, really, of construction. So incredibly aggressive construction. And as you can see, you've gotten some really impressive coverage in the county. Now, as I'm sure you guys know, you have incumbent providers in the county. You've got Comcast that primarily covers Yanceyville and areas straight up in a line kind of to the north. Then you have some legacy Brightspeed as well as legacy Spectrum as well already in the county. So when you add all those pieces in to what's already there, you are looking at about 95% coverage. I mean, it's very impressive what Caswell County, your staff have been able to do over the past 3 years through these grants. So I think that deserves a round of applause and pat on the back. You guys have done a great job. I do have a numbers slide for you just because I do like having the numbers there for you. It goes over everything that presented to this point. Again, that sort of baseline number, 5,062 homes, is a really impressive count. Going forward, we do have pretty exhaustive coverage in the county. So I don't know how many opportunities are out there left, you know, how many individuals may not have coverage. I'm sure that there are, in fact, some homeowners that are not covered by these grants. There are opportunities for those individuals to get service through grants. The state has recently announced a stopgap program. It's about $86 million in funds that the counties can go after. Stopgap was initially envisioned as those sort of onesie twosies addresses here and there that were either very long driveways or they were stuck in the middle of existing networks that were unserved that providers were unwilling to go into existing networks and go get. This program was initially designed for that. A good portion of the funds will still be eligible for that, but the state's also added in a little wrinkle that says counties can go after funds to use as matches for additional CAB grants. So even though you guys have already won a CAB grant and spent matching funds, you can go after additional funds that the state has and use that to kind of plus up and go after even more CAB dollars. And then we have BEAD. If anything is left over after stopgap, the state is getting $1.5 billion from the feds for broadband expansion and deployment. And that's going to be divvied out amongst the counties as well. So there are still options going forward. We certainly stand at the ready to help aid in any deployment that we can. And I'm sure you guys have questions. I know I kind of ran through that really quick, but I do want to get to any questions because those can often get in the weeds and take a while.
Questions from the board?
Jason, could you back up about 2 slides? Going back another one. The map. Okay, right there. Justin, I'm looking at your map.
Yes, sir.
And even though you've got those blue sections that were in RDOF highlighted, there are additional homes that are covered that are not covered by that blue territory. Am I correct?
Yes. So, and I'm going to do my best here to kind of describe. I don't want to go away from the mic. So all along the edges of those blue shaded areas, you have what are called synergy passings. So homes that a CBG that was covered by RDOF may be on the left side of the road. Well, if there's a home on the right side of the road, we're still going to give it service. Additionally, you may have roads, dead end roads, small roads that shoot off that are adjacent to CBGs that were in the RDOF program. We also went and covered those as well. So you are getting some additional coverage. You have a fair percentage on the boundaries of those CBGs that were also served through RDOF and that we claim to serve. And that's why you don't see in some places more dots adjacent, because those were picked up during RDOF.
Can you tell us what percentage of homeowners actually signed up with your company? I know if it was available, yes, but how many took the next step to sign up?
I can't. Unfortunately, that's something that we typically don't share.
Okay.
What I can tell you though is, it is a significant percentage. I'll say we're, we'll go with a little less than half, roundabout. So, I mean, keep in mind, there's a lot of factors that go into a take rate when people come by. Obviously, cost, which we make every effort. We have several low-income plans to try and allow for individuals in low income or different situations to be able to afford our products. The other thing too, there are a lot of vacation homes in the area. There are a lot of secondary homes in the area that individuals may not have any need or interest for service at those residents. So that gets factored into the take rate. But we're very pleased with what we've seen in the take rate in Castle, and we think it's right in line with everywhere else.
Anyone else?
What percentage of the homes now have coverage if they want it? Do you have any number breakdown as to what we have available countywide?
So I will be honest with you, and I think that is where, we're kind of always hitting a moving target. The maps always get better. As we go out and have people in the field doing walkouts, our internal numbers get stronger. The state is constantly doing surveys, coming up with new data points to where their data gets stronger. I will tell you that when we went after the latest round of CAB grants, the 589 homes that we bid for and won, that was all that we saw that was out there that did not have service. So based upon what we could see at that present time when we were doing our designs, we tried to go for everything. Now that's not to say that we only know what we can see. There may be things that we didn't see, but I think that you're getting down into the lower numbers at this point. You are only having the ones and twos, the homes that have mile-long driveways, 3/4 mile long driveways, the homes that are on private drives that are very lengthy and long to get to, and then homes that are right in the middle of areas that are served by legacy service providers. It is. I certainly don't want to speak for the industry, and I'm not necessarily speaking for charter, but just if you think about it, it's a tough business proposition for anyone to go into a competitor's territory and try and make do business and connect home, because the take rate is going to be a little bit lower. Things are going to be tougher to just break into the market wise. So I think that the only ones that you have left are going to be just all the low hanging fruit's gone. So it's going to be the very hardest stuff to get to. Yes, sir.
What else? Thank you.
Absolutely. And I'll be here happy to answer anyone's specific questions as we go on throughout the night.
All right. Next on the agenda, reclassification, finance director position, Scott.
So I'm gonna have Jonna come up. She actually did the work on this and drafted this. Rather sit up here, John. So we wanted to wait till the 2022 audit was completed to get the finance director reclassed and posted out there. It's really hard to get somebody to come, but I'll have her talk about that.
I'll just go up to the podium.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Good evening, commissioners. As you know, the finance officer position is currently vacant, and as also Mr. Thompson answered your question, the finance officer is ultimately responsible for all the financial operations of the county. And it is extremely important to get a well-qualified, experienced person in order to move the county forward and to set up better processes and procedures to ensure your records are kept timely. Finance officers are a very difficult group to recruit right now. Some of your neighbors are currently have been recruiting for people for finance officer positions, and it's taken them a couple of times to get qualified people. So for you to be in the best position to recruit for this, it's important to set a salary range. And what we're recommending is to reclassify the finance officer position to a chief financial officer, which shows the full breadth of that experience, because they are overseeing all the financial transactions of the county. And they also have the statutory authority that if transactions are not being performed correctly, they can stop it. And quite frankly, some of the things that we are changing now in the department is things where previously items that weren't budget, where there was no budget, expenditures were made. And that's some of why you see some of the budget violations. So there's a lot of supervision of the other departments in your county. And in looking at your pay bands, the highest that you could put this position is at a pay band 81, which the salary range would be 71,447 to 105,470. And even at that range, I think you will have difficulty attracting qualified applicants. The county has a $40 million budget. It is not a small entity. The complexities are huge. The requirements are large. It is a tremendous level of responsibility and requires a tremendous amount of knowledge and experience to do it well. And given the constraints of your current pay bands, this is the highest band below the county manager. So that's why we are recommending that this position be reclassed to give you the best opportunity to get a qualified individual to take over the leadership of the finance office. Scott, I don't know if you want to add anything.
I do know that Person County, I met with their manager last Saturday. She was at the conference. They reposted theirs with a higher salary because they went through a first round and they're just keeping it open. Rockingham did just hire somebody. I don't think you want to hear the kind of numbers that those other, there's not a lot of market for qualified finance people in the nation, to be honest. I had a position in Alaska that was open 2 years and it paid 40 to 60,000 more than the city manager pay that I was getting, and I got no qualified applicants. So I think, this is a budget and a classification, and this is where, under normal circumstances, this is where we would put that position. And I think, that gives me we do have the budget authority because of vacancies. We do have the ability to pay. My guess is the starting pay for this is going to be at or above the maximum range, which I can't go above your maximum. If you go on like the municipalities, the county association websites, they have postings there for finance directors currently open across state. Person County is in good financial condition, and they have things run pretty tight, and they're paying up to 157,000. I'm not saying it's going to take that kind of money to get somebody here qualified, but I would say there's a lot of small cities, which is a fifth the complexity of a county, and they're paying in the 130s to 150s for those types of positions. And that's, you could find a job if you're a finance person. I would say that Jonna has been here for a long time with us. Some weeks she works 60+ hours a week for this entity, which is applauded. She really has kind of lifted us, but we need somebody that's going to be competent and correct a lot of the deficiencies and problems we've had. And if we don't have that, it's not good to pay the accounting firms and the auditors and to have to put that burden on the staff, because it's going to cost a lot more than paying somebody competent.
Well, and I want to just mention, this is almost some cost avoidance on your part. There have been several areas where, had the Isaac Loop or I not been able to identify some of the things that needed to be completed and know how to do them, you could have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it may seem, I know this is a, wide salary range, and it's, a challenge to think you've got to pay someone this, but investing in the right, being able to afford the right qualifications is going to save you much more money down the road, because you do have a lot of funds at risk when they're not stayed on top of and not aggressively managed.
Couple questions I've got. So if changing this from a finance director to chief financial, and I didn't see it in here, what other responsibilities will be added to that position, if any?
I think it's showing just the whole breadth. It's not, their job is not just running the finance department.
Mhm.
Their job is running the finances of the county. And so I think there's a lot more involved in working with the departments to ensure they're managing their dollars appropriately. I think there's a lot to be done with your purchasing policies that could save the county money. So currently there are functions that you all aren't performing that needed to be added under this role.
It looks like it's about an $8,477 difference in the minimum versus what you're looking at going to. Was anything looked at as far as this position requiring a certified an accounting degree?
Oh, I think the position will require a 4-year degree. Absolutely. Preferably in accounting.
Now, when you said 4-year degree, now you can get a 4-year degree in something totally doesn't.
No, a 4-year degree in business, accounting, management, financial analysis. That's what you've got to be looking for. You've got to find, and the fundamental accounting is important. Accounting is all based on debits and credits. And if you don't have those straight, and quite frankly, those haven't been straight, you can't properly account for your transactions. So a fundamental knowledge of accounting is of utmost importance.
And I would add that's fund accounting, not like you could have a CPA and be an expert financial person. Don't have municipal government fund accounting knowledge. It's not really apples to apples.
Fund accounting would be helpful, but I'm talking about the basic bookkeeping, knowing that debits are recorded, expenses are recorded as debits, revenues are recorded as credits. And it's the basics in some instances that are causing some of the challenges.
One other question, and I don't see it in here, so forgive me for asking. under the position as it is listed now, is there an accounting degree required under that position?
I'm not sure. I don't have
Okay.
that off the top of my head.
But this chief financial officer position will have that.
Yes. And I don't know that it requires a CPA. You don't have to be a CPA to know how to do really good accounting. So while that might be a plus, that designation increases your cost significantly. Because I'll just tell you, for comparative, starting right out of college, out of getting your accounting degree, students right out of college are making $50,000 to $70,000 with no experience.
That would be my next question. How much experience do you think this position we should look at with what we have been facing in the past? What would be your recommendation?
I think you need somewhere in the 6 to 8 years of experience of either being a finance officer in a similarly sized entity, or being an assistant finance officer of maybe even a larger entity where the person's ready to step into the director role. But they've got to have experience in large, complex organizations. They need to have had responsibility for millions and millions of dollars. And they need to have a track record of on-time audits, timely reporting, and really understanding, like I said, those basic fundamentals of what it takes to post transactions properly, close out a month, so that if you're doing a regular monthly close, by the end of the year, it's not difficult to do the audit. But if you're not staying on top of things every month, it becomes quite a challenge.
Thank you.
Has this job been advertised at a lower rate, or has it not been put out there at all yet?
It hasn't been put out there at all yet. We were waiting to get this reclassification done.
So we haven't tried to see if we can attract somebody at the rate we currently have, start out at the upper tier?
That's correct. I mean, if you want to do that, that's your pleasure, which is, but I think even at the lower tier, I mean, even at this range, I think it's going to be a challenge. I hope I'm wrong, but it's going to be a challenge.
What's the range now for finance director?
It's 62,970 to 92,955.
And you recommended it to go to what for the CFO?
71,447 to 105,470.
71,
447,
105,
470.
But there'll be a period of time before that 105 or 470. I mean, you just kind of working up to that, correct?
Maybe.
Or they could be hired at that rate.
Well, and I think that's what people, if we advertise that that's the range, people who want more than that aren't going to apply.
Yeah, a lot of places put their ads out and don't say what they pay to try to see what qualified applicants would negotiate. And I think, I don't think we would be surprised knowing what the market is, but I think if you put, if you put the specific salary in this market, I don't think you're going to get a lot of qualified applicants, but you never know.
Well, and I think it's important to manage expectations. Don't want to just put dependent on qualifications, but because you might have people who are expecting $150,000. So if the board's not willing to pay that, I feel it's disingenuous to not advertise the range in which you're willing to pay.
I mean, I don't know, some of the bigger counties pay in the 300s for these positions, so it's,
Yeah, but this isn't a big county, but it's still, $40 million is not a small budget. With over 20 funds, also, 350 employees, it's quite a large entity that has significant statutory requirements in how the operations and processes are supposed to be handled. And it's the findings that the auditors reported on, which is where things aren't being handled according to those standards and requirements.
Do you think staff shortage could play the part into this, but not having enough staff?
It- Possibly, and I think it's less of a staffing issue, and I think some of the reason why not advertising this immediately was at least having your 22 audit done. You're in a better position for candidates who are looking at you. 23 is well underway. I'll update you a little bit on that shortly. But I think you've got 1 or 2 positions in the department. One we're looking to go ahead and start advertising now, because I think, the best way to say this is we've been in a real crisis mode. There were some huge deadlines that were forcing us to try and get that 22 audit done, some of the system constraints, and we had to hit those hard deadlines, which was why there was so much push on 22. But we've improved a lot of processes. We've got a lot of things moving in the right direction for 25. So I think we're to the point now that you could bring on an additional staff person and it be more manageable than where we were 6 months ago. And we've got these better processes so we can start them off on the right foot. So it's taken a while to really get to the point where bringing in new staff wouldn't almost cause more harm than good.
Anyone else?
I want to ask, you said starting salary 1,000 around that? Just not knowing the job market and what's out there, do you think there's somebody nearby that would be interested with that type of background?
We won't know until we put it out there. Maybe. You never know what someone's circumstances are. But we want to be positioned, we want to put the county in the best position going out of the gate to try and, within the current constraints of your current pay and classification plan, be as attractive as we can be.
I would like to see something detailed as far as the responsibilities and
Okay.
duties and qualifications of the CFO compared to the current finance director position. Just
Okay.
what the difference is, what authority the CFO has that the current finance director position doesn't have.
we have the job descriptions. I didn't bring them up tonight, but
Well, I'm not talking so much about job description, Scott, as my
Yep.
understanding, maybe I'm reading between the lines and I shouldn't be. The CFO will have much, much more authority than the finance director does.
yeah.
And I want to know what that authority
Sure,
is
sure.
and what the implications may be as far as the county is.
Mm. I don't know that the authority will be that much more. I think it's more having that positional authority in the organization to where, if a department head isn't doing the right thing, that position has the positional authority to say, I'm sorry, you can't do this because of A, B, and C. That sometimes when you're a peer, that can be somewhat challenging. Because the responsibilities are pretty clear, set in the statute, but it's just how those are carried out within an organization. But even if we kept the job description exactly the same, I still think you've got to have this salary range to attract it.
These, one last question, these other numbers that you have on here, counting counties and then counties with, populations close to ours, are those finance officer salaries, or is that chief financial officer salaries?
In the survey, it just lists finance officer.
Okay, so those are finance officers.
Yeah, which could be the CFO because they don't distinguish. That just title varies from county to county. For example, Rockingham still is a finance director, Persons is a chief financial officer.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and so, yeah, these benchmarks looked at within the region, looking at the population range, and then looking at counties with a similar taxable property per capita, and that also might be agricultural. And you can see in that scenario, in the taxable property per capita in the agricultural range, the salary for agricultural communities is 81 to 126. So that's where the recommended range lines up more with these benchmarks.
Any more questions? Thank you, ma'am. Okay, next, going to be the county manager update.
So just a couple items. The TDA didn't have their item prepared. They want to come to you about the board member ex officio. That'll be on the next agenda. I didn't get that till this afternoon. PCC is asking about golf sponsorship. That was in our budget last year. I don't know if that's something that the commission wishes to continue. It is in the budget. I usually don't ask about those things, but I don't want to throw it out there if it's kind of an issue. The open house is on Wednesday. You've probably been getting a lot of flyers and information, but that's with the Dominion gas line that's coming through the county. So they're going to be on Tuesday, tomorrow, from 5 to 7 at Oak Haven Properties. That's located at 1434 Dybro Road in Pelham. And then on Wednesday, they'll be here from 5 to 7 p.m. at Yanceyville Town Hall. And it again is liaison, and they're presenting their open house for the community on the gas line. So if citizens or any of us have questions, I can also have her come do an update for the commissioners if you choose to do that. And then I was going to go over all the 911 stuff, but you've already brought that up, so I don't think I need to address that unless you had questions about what happened. I do want to real quickly have Jonna come back up and talk about, an update about the 23 audit. And just to be clear on the last item, until we have either reclass or direction, I don't really have materials to go out and actively recruit for that finance position. I do have the budget and the authorization. We would be looking at an accounting position that we talked about today about getting that advertised, because I do think we all consulted. I think we're at a point where we're ready to start getting some team to help us with some of this log and get finances moving forward. So, John.
I did just want to give an update on the 23 audit to follow up on Mr. Thompson's comments. So they have done a tremendous amount of the testing, but the last step is to get a trial balance and then make sure that all their testing agrees with what the final numbers are. We're having some challenges with some of the 23 numbers that they're not in as good a shape as I expected. And in some cases, we are having to go all the way through 24 to make sure that both years are right. So the good news is on that side, we're making some early progress on 24. But it is taking a little bit longer to get in certain areas of the trial balance done. And it's not efficient to give it to the auditors until we know the numbers are good. So I would like to think in the next 3 weeks to a month, we can have the biggest issues resolved. But it seems like every time we touch an issue, it raises another issue. And some of the issues are impacting the current fiscal year. So we're trying to keep all 3 years, moving forward, going at the same time. But so it's really looking like we're doing 23 and 24 a lot together. And then it will just depend on the auditor's capacity when we get them the trial balance. There's not a tremendous amount of work left for them to do other than tying out all of their work papers to the final numbers. And they will, of course, want to see all of our adjustments. So it's, if I had to describe it, it's somewhat like a scavenger hunt and a jigsaw puzzle all at the same time. Because some of the pieces are 2 years ago. Some of the issues we're finding go back more than that. So there's just a lot of things to make sure that we're getting the books right and that we know the impacts for 25 and beyond. So we are doing our best, but it's when you're doing stuff that's 2 years old, where other people did the work, trying to piece it all together can be a little time consuming.
How many people are currently working on that process?
We have the Isley Group, who is still continuing to support us in the process. Myself, Melissa Miller, and then other staff are helping research and pull documents as we go.
How many other staff members would you say?
Excuse me?
How many other staff members would you say are helping you?
Those are the primary ones that are working.
Yeah, but it requires some of these, all the grants, all the department heads with issues in their projects.
Yeah, so we're working with the departments when we have those issues. But there are also a lot of the staff currently in finance are keeping the day-to-day going. Because while we're trying to catch up these audits, they're still having to pay bills, having to run payrolls, having to manage the budgets. And, it's a lot, but some of this reconciling of the accounts is not an easy process. And it's sometimes not even an easy process for me because it has gotten, in some cases, very complicated and out of whack. And we need lots of other documentation in order to try and zero in on what the right numbers are, because departments may submit reports to the state, request reimbursement, but where the gap has occurred is making sure that those are the same numbers that are in the financial statements or that are in the financial system, because the financial system is the official accounting record of the county. And so what we're finding is there are some differences between what departments have been accounting for and what's happened in the finance office. So it's trying to recreate those records to determine what is really the right answer so that we can record it properly. And there's got to be enough evidence to know what that right answer is and that we can justify changes to the financial records.
Anything else? Thank you.
I noticed they mentioned in one of the summaries that there was a lot of piece missing or what have you. That's something that's going to be worked on.
Yes, that's being worked on now. And so that's one of the big areas that we've worked on improving. We've changed some configurations in the system. We're doing more frequent reconciliations. We're making sure that revenues are recorded in revenue accounts, expenditures are recorded in expenditure accounts. Because when that doesn't happen, that gets everything out of sync. And especially with some of the federal grants, state grants that we get, the auditors are provided a summary of what those revenues are. And the auditors are looking to see that that's what we have in our records. And when those don't match, that's an issue. And so that's when we have to go figure out, well, did it get recorded in the wrong place? Did it not get recorded at all? Where we've almost completed the 23 bank reconciliation. And the bank reconciliation is key because everything you do goes through cash. So everything that goes through that bank statement has to be found on the ledgers. And in some cases that has been a challenge, or there have been things in the ledgers that aren't on the bank statement. So you do, tens of thousands of transactions a year. So sometimes it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. But we're down to 5 items that we're trying to identify where they should supposed to be recorded. And when those are done, then we'll know that we've at least got all the cash accounted for in the bank. And now, is it accounted for in the right places? And you don't know that until you completely finish the revenues of expenditures of a fund and really see, does this make sense at the end of the day? And some days it doesn't, and we have to go figure out, so what's the issue?
Got a question. I know you're not want to don't want to hear it. Any idea on how long this is going to take for the finance to get all their stuff to the Isler Group?
I really think if there are a couple really big issues that if we can get those resolved, then the rest of the work is pretty clear. So I'm hoping within the next month.
Second question. Is this going to scare a new finance director completely off coming into the door? We have not got everything complete, or would we be better to have our house in order and then hire a new finance director?
Maybe you'll find someone who likes a challenge. I think it makes sense to go ahead and try and see what we can find, see if we can be successful now, because the right person can come in and can learn while we're working through some of these issues and be in a good place. Also, it won't be long before you'll need to be starting to work on the next year's budget. It is critical for your finance officer to be here at the beginning of that budget process, in my opinion. So I don't see any harm in starting the process now, especially if we're able to find the right qualified person. But Mr. Commissioner Dickerson, asking about the numbers that are working on this, right now, and we had this discussion today, if you bring in more temporary people, I'm not sure that's going to be helpful, which is why we said, let's go ahead and bring in the accounting specialist who can really pick up some of this a reconciliation work, which is what's really holding us up. And the stuff that's left to do right now is hard. And quite frankly, it takes someone with my level of experience to try and figure this out. So bringing in someone who doesn't see how all the pieces connect and understand the complexities would not be a good use of the county's money. And also right now, remember, I'm with you at no cost. The association continues to cover this investment in Caswell because they want to see Caswell positioned to succeed. But we need to get the 23 audit done, but we can't create more issues and challenges in 25. So in a lot of cases, we're having to stop, fix what's happening now, and then get back to 23 and 24. We don't want to keep digging the hole. So we know the hole of 23, but we want to make sure we're not creating a new hole in 25.
Question. You're very knowledgeable. And first, I want to say thank you for all you have done for this county. If you had not been here helping our department through this, we'd be in a lot of trouble. What you are finding, are you finding it's poor reporting or misplaced information from a finance director from long ago? Or are you finding any evidence of wrongdoing? Is any money missing?
That's a great question. And no, we have seen no signs of any money missing. You know, there is nothing that has led us to believe that. But we have seen a lack of attention to detail, a lack of knowledge of some standard practices and procedures, a lack of knowledge in some cases of statutory requirements. And some of that stems back years. One of the issues we're struggling with right now goes back to 2017. And so we're having to go and figure that out because it involves state grant money. Our records don't agree. And so at some point, we've got to reach agreement on that. But that requires a lot of research to make sense of the records that we have when the people who were here and did that are no longer here. So I see no evidence of wrongdoing. I see evidence of lack of experience and knowledge.
Well, I'd like you to think, you know, Caswell's a beautiful place.
It is.
And I understand we're gonna have a finance director's position open here pretty soon. You might want to come to Caswell County.
Well, I consider that a compliment. Thank you. But I will tell you, I'm here till we get this straight, whatever it takes. I'm not going to give up. I'm not a person who gives up easily. And I'm actually one of those people who loves a challenge. So I get kidded a lot because Melissa, I work in her office most days and I'll go, yay. And it's like, you know, we figured out something. We got it straight finally. And that happened on one thing today. So we can put that to rest. It's behind us. It's fixed through 24. And now we're moving on.
I noticed in the report, sometimes there were not proper documentation.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's a big.
Yes.
Is that being worked on?
Yes, ma'am. And that is really getting, I think it's got much better in 24. So over the last year, that's been a real concentrated effort to make sure that that is done. And so you still may see some of that in 23, but I really think we've made tremendous strides on that in 24.
So the staff has been made aware that they need receipts.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where if you don't have receipts, if you don't have a budget, if you don't have that stuff, we're telling people no, because you've got to follow the proper processes. And that's not real popular right now, But if you don't start making some of those changes and implementing correct processes, they're never going to get fixed. So it's no time like the present to start implementing new rules. I joke with Melissa, I'd say this in front of the sheriff, but I kind of tell her there's a new sheriff in town in finance, and we're doing things the right way. And even if it's different than how it's been done in the past, we're doing it right.
Anything else you got? Okay, next on the agenda will be the update attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, good evening. At your last meeting, you requested that I contact the North Carolina Wildlife Commission to determine if the shooting range at the wildlife game lands could accommodate the sheriff's department for their qualification purposes. I reached out to Travis Casper with the Wildlife Commission and Joshua Jernigan, who is actually the supervisor over the Caswell County Game Land Shooting Range. And they expressed enthusiasm in working with the county and the sheriff's department. And as it turns out, the wildlife game lands they're actually have plans to construct a new range facility out there. However, once Mr. Jernigan contacted the sheriff's department, it became apparent that the facility out there was unable to provide the qualifications for the sheriff's deputies for what they're looking for. So at this point, it doesn't look like the game land shooting range is an option for the sheriff's department. If I receive any additional information in the future, I'll keep this board updated. I also reached out to the Rockingham County Gun Club, reached out to the club president, Mr. Clem Ellis, along with Stephen Broad, who is the membership chairman. And they also expressed interest in working with the county and the sheriff's department. I forwarded their information to the sheriff's department, and it's my understanding they're in discussions at this point, but I do not have any updates for the board at this time. And also reached out to a Chuck Kirshner with the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality as it relates to having a shooting range on a landfill. So the Department of Environmental Quality, they actually oversee landfills and active landfills and inactive landfills in the state of North Carolina. And Mr. Kirshner and myself had multiple discussions along with our solid waste director, AJ Fuqua. And the Department of Environmental Quality is asking for a post-closure use plan. And they also want the county to address how we will protect the landfill cap, gas and groundwater monitoring wells, how the county can protect the gas and groundwater monitoring wells from people and vehicles coming into the firing range. But it doesn't appear that's going to be a roadblock. It just appears that the state wants to have proper plans and proper documentation and proper safety mechanisms in place if this board does indeed decide to move forward. So I'll keep you guys updated on that as well. And those are my updates during the open meeting, and I'll have further updates for you in the closed session. Thank you.
Heard from the county attorney, one on the board, got any questions for him?
Yes. What were the differences between the state shooting range and the sheriff's department? You had my attention talking about how enthusiastic the state was, and when they talked to the sheriff's office, it fell apart. What could not be worked out? Is it something that we can work with the state to implement where it would be feasible for the sheriff's office?
Commissioner Dickerson, I'm not sure the specifics. I don't know if it had to do with the distance of the range or the size or the space, but I'll be glad to research those specifics and report that back to you. I was just informed that the sheriff's department would be unable to utilize that facility because it wouldn't be able to accommodate the state qualifications for the sheriff's deputies.
Yeah, I'd like to know what it is. It's some minor change, something we can do. It'd be easier to do it there than it is to open up a shooting range and take all that liability on us. I'm very concerned about the liability going forward. The gentleman, well, we can talk about that later. But yes, I'm very much so wondering if you got $1 million worth of liability. One wrongful death lawsuit could eat that whole $1 million up, and the county's on the hook for the rest of it. So the fact that we have insurance is not really the issue here. We're on the hook for anything in excess of it. And if you have claims, then your policy premiums will go up. And accidents happen. I don't know if everybody in this room remembers years ago when it was a judge that shot a police officer at a range in Danville, right up off Westover Drive. Accidents happen even under the best circumstances. And I just don't know if this county should open themselves up to that. So I would like to know if there's a possibility that we could straighten out whatever kind of issue there are between the state and the sheriff's department needs for the facility. It would be a whole lot better money spent on that than it would to try to undertake a new shooting range, in my opinion. So yes, sir, I would like to see what the differences are and see if it's something we can work with.
Yes, sir. I'll gather additional research and report back to this board.
Thank you.
Anyone else? You? All right, anything else, Ms. Attorney? Anything you have?
No, sir, Commissioner Jeffers. I'll have another update for you in the closed session. Thank you.
We'll move on. Commissioner comments. Start with you.
No, sir, I don't have anything, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Okay, move on. Upcoming event on September the 2nd, 2024, the office will be closed for Labor Day. And September the 3rd, 2024, the Board of Commissioners meeting at 6:30 p.m. at the Historic Courthouse. We need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
You made the motion? Who second? Rick, second. All in favor saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, we now set into closed session. Take a minute. Break.
John.